Hey y'all, it's Reverend Katie here, and I'm so excited about being able to join you for midweek devotional today. Lisa and John, I'm so thankful for them continuing to hold this space well with me and share their own thoughts with you. But today I'm coming to share with you just some things that I've been thinking about in my own meditation and my spiritual life personally. I have been looking at this tendency that has really started to show up in our national conversation and also in any sector or organization that you can find, even in our marriages and relationships these days. And it is that of comparative suffering. Have you ever heard of that term before? Comparative suffering? You know what I'm talking about? I see it constantly in conversations with well-meaning, particularly faithful people, Christian folks that are trying to maintain self-awareness and sensitivity to the plight and the needs and the pain of others. But it also has some residual effects that I just wanted to bring to your attention and continue to bring to my own. So comparative suffering, what is that? So it shows up in things like in conversations when people say, I feel this, but it's not as bad as so-and-so's situation. So, like, I think about my friend who just graduated after 4.5 years in a master's degree program. She has 2 kids and just was working real hard full time along with getting a degree, and she didn't get to walk across the stage like she wanted to. And she had this virtual graduation, and she said, man, this virtual graduation is really hard, but it's not as bad as what some people have. I also think about some married couples that I've been counseling that tend to both hold very high levels of stress in their jobs and in their lives of raising children. And so in the midst of all of that stress, they find that this stress becomes a scorecard that they use to compare against the other person's situation. And one trumps the other as far as who should be sorry for whom. And so there are others that talk about being tired and angry about things that are happening at work. But hey, I had a friend in New York that said, well, I can't complain because at least I get a paycheck. There's so many people around me, my friend said, that I find have just been laid off. And so there's this growing culture of what I would call diminishment and apology that seems to emerge in us. And it really kind of diminishes the things that we are concerned about and the things that we feel. We hesitate to say these things out loud because we don't want to seem insensitive, because many of us, in the midst of our own privilege, we are safe and healthy and relatively secure. When so many people around the world in deep in pain and deep in anxiety are not, for a myriad of reasons. And so even though it's meant out of good intentions, gone unchecked, it really can do some irreparable damage to our minds and to our hearts. And so Brene Brown, some of y'all may have been exposed to some of her work, the books that she writes and the podcasts, Unlocking Us, that she does. I dabble in her stuff from time to time. And she's a researcher at Rice and has talked a lot about with different folks that she's studied about this issue of comparative suffering. And she's found that the underlying driver of all comparative suffering definitely tends to be fear and its first cousin, scarcity. So fear and scarcity are, of course, driving so much in our world right now. You can tell culturally for us when we're in a place of scarcity in an organization or even in our governmental conversations, when the talk centers around what's wrong and who's to blame. What do we need to anticipate and be afraid of, and who is going to take the fall? We have a lot of scarcity-driven leadership in every place, whether it be in government. You can even find it in the church sometimes among clergy and laity. There's so much fear for a lot of us that drives this narrative of I'm not enough, or we're not going to have enough, or who's doing what and who's doing better than I am or you are, that leads us to an unhealthy comparative posture. So for the times that it's shown up in my life, when I think back, it really tends to crop up in unhealthy times where I'm unbelievably tired, struggling with something that hasn't been fully dealt with well, maybe living an unexamined season in my life. And those unhealthy places are fertile ground where comparison can easily be triggered and grow. So even in our pain and comfort, we're not immune from, even in those very core human experiences, this pain and discomfort, having those even too being assessed and ranked. And by virtue of that, not giving ourselves real permission to feel or to welcome whatever comes inside of us. So comparative suffering, Brene talks about it as the central piece of this comparative suffering is all predicated on the idea that empathy in life is finite, that we have compassion fatigue, and there's some end to the compassion or real empathy that we can offer even the closest and most beloved people around us. She talks about it like a pizza or a pie. So if we think about our lives and our relationships as people around a table, and we are all just unbelievably hungry for that which will help us survive and even thrive in life, we have this pizza, and if we only have a certain amount of people that are there to eat, you can cut it into, like 4 slices and get a really good helping of food. But if you have more people that begin to gather around proverbially in your life and ask for that same piece or bit of food that you are pining for, then those 4ths become instead 8ths, and you cut them into even smaller pieces, slivers, as 16ths. And the fear comes that we are all going to continually be starving. So for us, we have to focus on the fact that empathy and compassion are some of the basic needs that we have in life. And I hope that you can agree with me that love as a commodity, love as a need, is the last thing that we need to ration right now in a hurting and constantly changing world. I've come to find in my own life and watching those I minister with, those even in my own household, that this posture can start really, really young, even from the youngest days when we were all kids. So there were thousands of children that started school in our parish this past week, and I had the blessing and gift of having our 3 kids come to UMPEA, our preschool and after-school program that's serving right now as a virtual hub during the day for so many families that are just struggling to stay working on a full-time basis while getting their kids educated. And I was so proud of our church and the way that we've extended ourselves creatively to meet a need in the community. And so my kids, particularly my oldest child, Eva, started this virtual school with meeting all of her new friends on the screen. And after that first day, the next morning on Tuesday, she woke me up at 4:30 and she was crying, put her head on my chest and just started to share about how she was just unbelievably sad and afraid. She was talking about how, she had her friends at that other school that she had gotten close to. And so now that she wasn't with them all of the time, that now she's having to meet these new friends, that somehow there would be not enough love or not enough attention or not enough space for these old friends to continue to love her and think about her. Again, that rationing starts at the earliest of ages. And so I took a breath and I wiped the tears out of my own eyes because they were definitely there. And I started to share with her once again about how love multiplies. That when we have the opportunity to make new friends, the love for the friends we already have doesn't diminish, but our hearts just continue to grow to make space for new people that God puts in our path. We had to say that same kind of truth whenever Eva's little brother and then the other little brother came and blessed our house and came to our proverbial table to be fed with love and with food. And so, I had to explain to her that a parent's love and a parent's heart continues to grow. And by extension, God's love for us continues to grow. And in its purest form, at the very heart of that love, it is always and forever generative. The Apostle Paul talks to the church in Rome that was dealing with its own rationing of love and energy. And he gave these words of wisdom to them as they struggled with many things that we even do today. He said this in chapter 8, verse 18 at the start. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that we might consider that is going to be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed to each other, and in hope that the creation itself will be liberated and freed from its bondage to decay and brought instead to the freedom and glory in store to the children of God. He was talking about them. He was talking about us. And because he was talking about God's love having no boundary, he also is suggesting what I'm saying today, that we are called to respond in love and in empathy, no matter what barrier seems to be in our way, because it helps everyone and continues to make God's glory and God's name praised, not just through our lips, but through our lives. Kids can feel like their worlds are ending because their worlds are so small, but we as adults, our worlds are not as big as we might profess for them to be. The best thing that we can do is let kids feel, and perhaps maybe that permission might fall even better if the adults begin to follow suit and accept that permission for ourselves, for you, and for me. The thing about comparative suffering, diminishing our own pain so that we can give voice or at least attention to another, it doesn't make our suffering any lighter. It only makes it exacerbated, doubled down, even more thick and heavy. Because when we don't give voice to our own struggles, it leaves us not just exhausted, but overwhelmed and unseen and worried, and definitely feeling as if we are alone. And so when we care for ourselves fully and really attend to what's going on inside, and even more when we have the courage and vulnerability to share that with someone else, whoever that someone else or the people are in your life that are your person or persons, it is perfect training for the moments when God will position each of us to be that generative love in the life of someone else that needs it most. When God positions us with opportunities to have empathy multiply through us in a world that is in such great need of love today. So part of our job is to truly respect the individuality of traumatic times. Whenever somebody else is saying that they have this painful situation or something they're concerned about, we don't diminish it. We don't say that it's going to be all right. Just don't worry your pretty head about it. Or this other person, let me tell you about their story. Yours isn't so bad. And we don't turn that narrative on ourselves either. Each of our situations is both unique and connected to the pain of many. We all process this trauma, this concern differently, but what we're each feeling is equally real and valid to speak of. It all matters. And so there's so much that we can do for ourselves and for others today to show up with our very best selves. And so, friends, let's not lose out on the opportunity to share empathy with whoever we meet, whether it be the most beloved one in our lives or a stranger in our midst. One of the ways I've found to prepare my heart to do that in both healthy and unhealthy seasons is through the welcoming prayer by Father Thomas Keating. It's a prayer that kind of digs into some of my attachments and some of my, resistance to noticing that which is internally happening, especially those things that are kind of ugly and hard to admit to. And so I'd like to end our time today by praying this prayer on your behalf. And then I'd invite you, if it's a new prayer to you, to look it up and maybe use it as a discipline in your own life of faith in these next days as we are all holding much. And so get yourself in a comfortable place, and whatever the prayer stance is for you, looking up to the sky or bowing your head in reverence to God. Pray with me as we go to God, asking for the strength we need that is beyond our own capacity to attain. Let us pray. Welcome, welcome, welcome. God, we welcome everything that comes to us today because we know it is for our healing. We welcome all thoughts, feelings, emotions, persons, situations, and conditions. I let go of my desire for power and control. We let go for our desire of affection, self-esteem, approval, and pleasure. We let go of our desire for survival and security. We let go of our desire to change any situation, condition, person, or ourselves. We open in this moment to the love and the presence of God and your action from within. And the people of God said, Amen. Friends, may it be so in your life and in mine today. I hope that you have a beautiful week and that I'll get to see you around sometime soon. Take care.